Hello, hello. There we go. Almost thought I had a wardrobe malfunction on my first time. Hi, everybody. My name is Micheline Murphy, and my session is called Insider Baseball, and this is exam taking tips from an insider perspective. So I'm going to skip this. This is my agenda. I'm going to do a little introduction, and then you all are going to do a little introduction. I'm going to talk a little bit about the whys and the motivations behind this certification program, talk a little bit about the scope of each exam, and then I'm going to finish up the time with deconstructing a few questions, exam questions, not your questions. What I'd love to be able to do is take your questions at the end, and if we don't have time at the end of this session, I'm happy to stick around. So let's start out with some introductions. As I said, my name is Micheline Murphy. I'm a subject matter expert on the Cisco advisory panel, and I have been since 2020. I contribute content for the DC Core exam, the Implementing ACI exam, and the Implementing ACI Advanced exam. In addition to that, I've been an exam taker as well. I've got the CCNP in data center. I've got the CCNP in enterprise, and I have multiple specializations for each. And then as of just recently, I also had the CCNP in older out switch and the CCDP. So let's get a quick introduction from you all. How many folks are first-time test takers? Oh, great. We've got a few first-time test takers. How's about folks who are subsequent test takers? A few subsequent test takers? Great. How's about folks who are trying to research? All right. So we've got the whole slew of folks. Anybody ever heard somebody tell you that, man, those Cisco exams are kind of hard? Yeah? Yeah? Yeah, you right there? Yeah? What about for yourselves? You've sat through a Cisco exam and you just feel like you just got beat down. Anybody ever ask themselves, well, why is it that Cisco exams are so hard? Well, let's just peel the covers back off right away. It seems self-evident, but as a insider in the exam writing process, this is probably the biggest motivation for Cisco and the Cisco Exam Advisory Board is that a pass has to correlate to a capable engineer. And if you think about it, that probably makes a lot of sense. And in order to be able to do that, there are a few things that we're really all keen on. So this one's a no-brainer. Questions have to be technically correct. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that. If we have to talk about this one afterwards, you're going to need to buy me a beer first. That the level of difficulty of the exam is appropriate. So if you're going for an associate exam, that the level of difficulty for those questions on that exam are appropriate to what a capable associate engineer is going to be able to know, or should be expected to know. And then the last thing is that the exams are structured to minimize the ability of the candidate to just guess the right answer. And the reason this is important is because we're looking for capable engineers, not capable test takers. So let's go from here, talking a little bit about the whys behind the exam and talk a little bit about the exams themselves. So for all the folks who put their hands up that they've looked at an exam or they're trying to test for exam, who has looked at an exam blueprint? Doesn't matter what it is, looked at an exam blueprint. All right. Why? Why have you? Josh, I'm going to call on you first because I know you were going to come here and heckle me.
I want to know what's on the test.
You want to know what's on the test. What about, does that sound great? Josh wants to know what's on the test. Anybody else? Daniel? on the test? What's on the test? Anybody else have any answers about Rika? You want to? So the breakdown, the percentages, what's on each test. Is that ringing bells for folks? All right. So let's take a look at the document itself. Officially, it's called the exam topics document, but nobody calls it that. Everybody calls it the blueprint. I just called it the blueprint. I said blueprint. Everybody knew what it was. What it defines is the minimally qualified candidate, the MQC. And that is the very, 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 very least a passing candidate should know. And that's important for you to wrap your brains around, because the exam blueprint isn't going to tell you everything. It's going to tell you the very least you should study. Now let's talk a little bit about this document itself. It's regularly changed to comport with industry trends. This has been a change that has been instituted fairly recently. It used to be that you would take an exam and it would have the same content for several years in a row. And what Cisco found is that the exams weren't changing fast enough to keep up with industry standard. And so recently, the exams decided to go to a regularly scheduled change. And you can find these regularly scheduled changes. They're publicly published, so you can look on the roadmap and see when your exam is going to come up and take a look. And if your timing is right, you can look at not only the blueprint for the exam if you took it today, but the exam if you're going to take it after the change. So these changes, whoops, I apologize. These changes are on the learning network at .cisco.com. You'll find your blueprints there. You'll find the refresh roadmaps there as well, and it'll give you the timing for each refresh. Now, why is the refresh important? Because from a strategic point of view, as a strategic and smart studier, if you know you've got a refresh coming up, you want to take a look and see to make a decision as to whether or not you're going to be advantaged by sticking with the old blueprint and going for it sooner, or if you're going to be advantaged by waiting a little bit. So it is important to have that kind of awareness of where you are in the exam process, where you are in your exam preparedness, and how does that align up with what changes are coming down the pipe. All right, so let's take a look at the exam blueprint. Anybody know where this is from? You don't get to say. What's that from? Whoops. There goes my baseball scholarship. DCACI. So as you can see here, this is section 1 on the DCACI exam. And it talks about ACI topology and the object model and things like that. And we're all talked about and we all agree this is where we're going to go to figure out what we're going to study. But what a lot of people, or not enough people, let's say, don't know how to read this so they can get the most out of the exam blueprint. There are actually 2 types of information on this exam blueprint that are important for test takers to understand. The first one is the subject matter. So things like topology and hardware and ACI policies and object model. That's an important thing to know, but just as important to know, and what I think lots of folks don't understand, is the depth to which you need to know it in. And that's in the verbs. So in here, we've got describe, we've got to utilize, we've got to implement. These verbs talk to the exam takers about how deep they need to go into each subject. And so how do we unlock this verb code? It's not actually a code. It actually doesn't come from Cisco. it comes from educators. This is Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy is a construct that educators have been using for decades to be able to set solid educational standards. And what it does is it describes the complexity of a test versus the skill that it tests. So at the bottom here, you can see it says lower order thinking skills. At the very, very bottom, we've got remembering. This is basically rote memorization. This is like being able to sing a song in a language that you don't speak. There's no comprehension in understanding. So the first level of actual comprehension is understanding. So understanding is basic, low-level grasp of a concept. If I'm at this level, this blue level, I can take a couple variables, I can put them into the concept, manipulate the concept, and come with the right answer. But it's a very high level. It's often seen on exam blueprints as described. As we go up to the next couple levels, the yellow and green, the analyze and apply, now we're talking about more solid comprehension. We're talking about being able to take the concept that's involved, apply a moderate number of variables to it. You might even be able to break the concept down into its component parts and be able to speak to the relationship of the concept's parts to each other. This is the level where you're able to apply deductive reasoning to a situation and come up with the right answer. And a lot of times you'll see this as implement. At the pinnacle there is creating and evaluating. And creating and evaluating requires judgment. At this level, you have such a deep understanding of the concept that you can take a large number of variables and you can apply your own judgment to the situation, to the scenario that you've been given, and you can formulate an opinion and support that opinion with the variables that you've been given. So this is things like troubleshooting or support a design option. Do these sound familiar in any way? Does this pattern look a little familiar to y'all? Okay, it should. So here we've got Bloom's taxonomy, and very roughly speaking, the lower level, the lower order thinking skills comport with a CCNA. And then the middling level areas comport with the CCNP. And then, of course, once we get to the top, when we're talking about troubleshooting and we're talking about supporting design options, we're talking about expert levels. But what's really the take home of this? Let's put all of this together now. So we know we have an exam blueprint. It's got subject matter. It's got depth. What's our take home? Our take home is that the higher in the Bloom's pyramid that the blueprint tells you to go into the subject matter, the deeper you as test takers should dive into that subject matter. And that means that if you're diving deep, you're not solely relying on the OCG. You're looking for materials on your own, like white papers. You're looking for instructional videos. You are really getting your own feet wet and going as deep as the exam blueprint tells you. It also means there's always a rule 2 that says look at rule 1. There's rule 2 that says look at rule 1. Because just because I showed you that exam blueprint excuse me, that slide that says the CCNA is the bottom of the pyramid and the CCNP is the middle and the CCIE is the top, doesn't mean that you're not going to have situations where you've got an exam blueprint that's telling you you need to implement something on an associate's level exam. Or maybe you've got the reverse where you're studying for an NP level exam and it's telling you to describe. A smart test taker will be able to understand the differences and be able to economize their study time. And if you're just relying on kind of the rough outlines, you might not go deep enough, or you might go too deep in your subject. All right. So let's deconstruct some questions. All right, got a question. Give everybody a minute or so to take this in. All righty. So let's take a look at this question. This question has, so dog 1 and dog 10 are two endpoints in the same VLAN, and the VLAN's name is dog park. Dog 1 and dog 10 are both connected to a switch by switch 1, which is a layer 2 switch. What does switch 1 use to forward traffic from dog 1 to dog 2? So this isn't really a memorization question. This isn't asking me to sing the song in German. You can see we've got a small number of variables. So we've got 2 endpoints. We've got 1 VLAN, 1 device, 1 connecting device. So small number of variables. But so we're not memorizing. We've got a small number of variables. This is a described question. Let's take a look at the answers a little bit. Focus on the answers just a little bit. So the right answer is MAC address. So, but the answers from the perspective of the exam creators are just as important as the questions that they are asking. So it's important for us to take a look at the questions, the answers to the questions as well. So on a Cisco Certified Exam, you're not going to see truths and falses. You're not going to get any of these questions that says which answer is not, the right answer. You're not going to see none of the above. You're not going to see all of the above. You're not going to have a process of elimination to be able to rely upon. And you're not going to find educational content in the question itself. For example, you're not going to see something that asks you about a null route and find the definition of a null route in the question. And why is that? Why is it that we don't have anything like that? And again, it goes back to the thought process that's going on when we're putting together the exams, which is the pass has to correlate to a capable engineer, not a good test taker. So there's no trick answers and there's no trick questions on purpose. So if you think that the question is a trick question or the answers are trick answers, go back and reread the question and the answer. What I can tell you is that all of the questions are vetted for not just clarity and technical correctness, but the other thing that they're vetted for is to make sure that there are no subliminal patterns even that might suggest a good answer. So in here, you're not going to see things like the MAC address, the IP address, the leash and the water bowl. They're not they're not going to be answers that are going to be available to you that can be ruled out right away. All right, so take home tip number 3. No trick questions, no trick answers. So I like to translate this as just know the material. Don't rely on your ability to be able to narrow down your options to be able to make educated guesses, because the exams have been engineered to try and avoid that, because PAS has to, again, it has to correlate to capable engineers, not good test takers. All right. Another question. All right. So here we have a question. It's asking you to refer to the exhibit. We've got some additional variables here. So we've got a couple endpoints, a couple subnets. We've got a couple routers, some IP addresses. We've got a command that we have in here. We need to be able to use this particular command to be able to go from party pups to Mazikeen, destroyer of couches. So this requires more than just basic understanding. There's a lot of things involved in here. We need to know, how does subnetting work? How does routing work? How do these two routers exchange routes? How do they talk to each other? And then we also need to know how ping works. So this is a moderate number of variables. We've got a moderate number of variables. We've got a deeper, this requires a deeper understanding of the concepts. And there are, in fact, a multiple number of technically correct questions to this. Anybody want to throw some technically correct answers? Go ahead. We're going to pretend it's 2 and 3. So, okay. But in this particular case, yes, you could change the IPs. Anything else? Okay. You guys are going to make me give it to you. I'm not gonna give it to you. But the point of the answer of the question is that once you kind of parse through this, and this is an implement question, by the way. Once you parse through this, if you're at the level that you need to be at, you will have in your brain a short list of, okay, these are the answers I am looking for in the options, and you'll be able to choose the best of the options among the answers that you've been given. And then I am gonna, this is my own bit of advice. I started out by asking who has been a subsequent test taker. I myself am a very many times subsequent test taker. Failure of an exam is not failure unless you quit. And persistence guarantees that the results are inevitable. And that's my 2 bits. And I think I have about 5 minutes for questions. So I know, gentleman in the back there with the blue, you had a hand up. Sorry.
Yeah, in that picture with the dogs, yeah. The right answer is MAC address because it's all layer 2. But the dog interaction, more like ARP request, that's layer 3 or layer 2/3. So this is, in my perspective, some kind of, not a trick question, but it leads you to the different answer.
Yes. And in real life, if you've sat for a question, none of the dogs are going to be there. So you probably just only have the text. So, but it's 2:45 on Wednesday at Cisco Live, and if I just throw up a question there, you're all gonna go to sleep.
This just because in a layer 2, the switch knows all the things. If it doesn't know the MAC address, then it just broadcasts request.
Yeah.
So that is kind of contrary to you say that's no trick questions, no trick answers. So that part needs to go.
Right here.
Why does Cisco put in experimental questions into the test to take time away from the
Because Cisco is always looking to improve the.
that way?
What's that?
Couldn't they be marked that way as experimental questions?
Well, if you mark an experimental question,
You won't take it.
It won't be a valid answer.
Yeah.
So it won't. The results of it won't be useful. So it'll be a waste. It will be a waste of time that way.
Cisco account for that extra question? No. Okay.
Any other questions?
What's a good resource for labs,
For labs?
the virtual lab, instead of buying your equipment? Do you have something?
So there's that's a really, really broad question. So Cisco hosts dCloud, which has a number of the labs, including some of the walk-in labs that are here that are available. There's DevNet that hosts a lot of sandboxes that are available. If you go to the Cisco Learning Network, there are a number of labs that are available. You can use Cisco Modeling Labs, which is, I believe there's a student price for it. And it's on sale right now, Emma tells me. So Cisco Modeling Labs can help you build your own virtual labs. I'm at WWT. We have a Cisco U. Thank you. I'm from WWT. We also host a lab environment for the public. And I could talk to you offline about how to get involved with that. But definitely, my first piece of advice for folks who are looking for resources is to go to Cisco Learning Network, to Cisco U, and find out what's available from Cisco. Great question. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. I'd like to just finish up by saying thank you. This content's going to be available in conjunction with a companion article that's coming out next week. And it will have this slide deck and the recording of this session to go with it. So I saw tons of folks who are taking pictures of the slide deck. The slide deck's going to be available. And I've put some additional special content in the slide deck for folks to download. Thank you very much for your time.